All right, welcome everybody to our Wednesday Zoom and Learn. My name is Tommy Dutcher. I'm the area sales manager for California Title. And we have a great Zoom and Learn for you today that is all about lease options, i.e. rent to own, land lease, whatever you want to call the things. You're going to have a great meeting today to learn all the insights of how that happens and what you need to do to be prepared for that. So without further ado, Mary Jane Morris with Granite Escrow.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is one of my favorite classes to teach, but before I get started, I want to welcome the other Granite Escrow staff members, Jonna Ennis from La Jolla, and Tracy. I'm always terrified I'm going to say your last name wrong. Would you say it for me one more time and I'll remember?
Sure, Tracy Hassey.
I wasn't sure if I'm supposed to say the E or not, and I was...
Yes, just think Sassy Hassey.
Together, we make up a third or so of the sales team for Granite Escrow in various territories, and we try to bring solutions to your real life situations with your escrows. So we're very happy to have you here today. Today, we're going to talk about lease options. I get this call 6 to 12 times a year where somebody is contemplating one and needs an immediate crash course. 1 hour, it takes me about an hour to do it. Need an immediate crash course on lease options. The whole time I'm talking, they're learning why they could or could not do it that way. And so it almost is one of the few places where I get off the phone and I'm emotionally exhausted because I wasn't able to put your whole deal together, or I wasn't able to explain to you how you could have negotiated better and that sort of thing. So it was very important for me to get this into our library so that people can hear the very best of the information I have available. Lease to owns are absolutely a viable way. And there's a second piece of lease to owns that I'm not going to go into today, and I will do a special class on it called all-inclusive trust deeds, or AITDs, which is what most people call a wrap mortgage. Because there's some legal stuff that goes into that one, we decided to separate it out a little bit. But the basic difference between a lease option and an AITD is a lease option is a traditional rental situation plus an option to purchase down the road. In an AITD, you are getting the grant deed and ownership immediately, and you can do escrow and title and all that you need to do to secure that transaction. So we'll talk about AITDs another week, but for this week, we're going to talk about lease options. But AITDs do come up in this conversation, so I wanted you to have that wording. As usual, the wonderful Tommy Dutcher, who I appreciate every day for his good advice and his client referrals. And on Wednesdays, I am extra grateful for his tech support. So we have a PowerPoint to get started on. So, while he's bringing that up, in the links after everybody has joined, he will put in the handout that I have for you. He will put in the link to the Zoom. He will put in, you can even have this PowerPoint if you want it. So I don't know if you can post it.
I'll put the PowerPoint and the handout in the chat a little bit towards the end. Well, I'll do it here soon, and then I'll do it again towards the end. Okay. But yeah, let me just get this prepared here and we'll be good to go. Share sound. All right. And all right.
All right. I have a very brief little, well, let's take the first slide. Go ahead, the next slide, Tommy.
Yep.
So what is a lease option? It's just a plain old rental with an additional document that says for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on what you negotiate, you have the right to purchase the property at a specific price and terms. Otherwise, it is just a straight rental, and if you are unable or unwilling to exercise the option, you just are a regular tenant, and when the time comes, you'll cash out the way you usually do, with the walkthrough and all that sort of stuff. So a lease option does not convey ownership, but it does create a cloud that the seller cannot sell that property to anyone else without taking you out of your option by negotiating or by waiting it out. So let's go on. Why don't more people in California know about lease options? And the reason we don't is because for California, we don't have a lot of property that we can't sell. If you, after we're done, do a rent to own search, you're going to find pretty much everywhere that isn't coastal has a large lease to own market, and it is a routine matter for them. So because our properties very often have a buyer somewhere, it's more rare in California, but it is a nationally known purchase opportunity or way to get into a property, or better yet, a way to control a property without owning it, meaning you can do this yourself. Tracy, Jonna, Tommy, Tracy, all of you can individually tie up a property, put your own renter in there, make money on top of it all, and take the whole thing out somewhere down the road without ever owning and still make a profit. So let's go on and talk about the next slide, Tommy. So there are three types of lease options. There's a straight lease, the one I just talked to you about. We're going to lease, we're going to have an option, we're going to have a purchase contract. A sandwich lease is the type of transaction that I just talked to you about, where you get it as a screaming deal or something that's below market or even at market, but it's desirable enough to go over market, and you're going to basically sublet to the next person your terms, but at a point that allows you to keep a part of that profit. And then there are assignment lease options where you can take over someone else's lease options. I want to make it clear that in California, especially for the escrow people, double escrows are not allowed in California, meaning if you put a property under contract and a lease option, and then you immediately are able to sandwich lease it out to someone else, and everybody's ready to close, meaning everybody's going to exercise their options right now. If there's a different set of numbers on the second transaction, California requires the original seller to know that. So a double escrow in California means two escrows on the same property where it's going to bang quickly from one seller to another seller very quickly. And a lot of times the people will try to open both escrows at the same time, and they cannot do that. So double escrows, they can do it if the original seller knows the price and the terms of the second transaction. The reason that's unlikely is because when they see the profit they could have made that you just made on them, they very often will not allow it, and they will want to renegotiate their own situation. So most buyers in that situation are trying to keep their newly earned profit a secret from the original seller, and California does not allow that. So no double escrows in California.
See a lot with wholesale deals and stuff with that as well.
Next slide. So what kind of candidate properties are great to consider for a lease option? If they've been on the market a long time, we're going to talk a little bit about sellers markets and buyers markets in this transaction. Clearly, we all know we're in the sellers market right now, and there are certain techniques that you will use for when you're in a seller's market versus a buyer's market. But anybody who's been on the market a long time, there's a problem. And usually it's because very often they're overpriced. My favorite thing about a lease option is price is not a real consideration here. It's whether they're going to let you have control of the property for a number that you can afford, and with a plan that you're going to be able to take it out somewhere down the road when you have to exercise your option. So long days on market is an excellent candidate for a lease option. Overpriced. One of the number one things I fight off is when a person's trying to do a lease option, they often believe that they are having a similar negotiation to a regular purchase contract, and the buyer's trying to get the price down, the seller's trying to get the price up. Seller names the price on this one. In fact, In some cases, it is going to be over market because the seller is looking 2 years down the road and figuring what the property is going to be worth 2 years down the road. Now, is that a safe bet right now? Is the seller's market we have right now going to last 2 years? Unlikely. But if they put you under contract at this point, you are going to have to work that out on the other end if you can't appraise or you need other situations. But price, I tell people just start at list and start there. This is not a bargain opportunity unless the property has conditions. It has unusual conditions that are going to make it viable. Vacant properties, and especially properties where the person is carrying 2 mortgages between when a seller has gone ahead and bought the next property or has a change in tenancy. So if it's vacant or they're carrying a mortgage, these people really want somebody in there. And if they can get a few more dollars for it, and they're not going to have to turn over ownership for 1, 2, 3 years, there's some tax benefits there, and they may decide to do that. Free and clear properties are, oh, I got a little typo there, I see that. Free and clear properties are a great candidate for this because the seller has complete control. There's no mortgage that has to be paid or he has to be worrying about. He can make a true seller carryback situation with you. This would also, a free and clear property would also be an excellent opportunity for an AITV transaction. And really any property where the seller is okay being a landlord. When the homeowner has worked, sometimes a homeowner, when they're showing you a property that they want to sell, they will tell you about the 72 hours of straight tile laying they did in that bathroom, and it's their most precious tile. And those people who fear having a tenant in their property are not a good candidate for lease options. So very often I have to talk them back from worrying about that particular tile. But that's the kind of language you will hear when a seller's not a good candidate. They will start talking about how much time or effort they put into the house, how they fear tenants, that sort of thing. So any place where they're comfortable being a landlord. Next slide. Where do you get these properties? The MLS, obviously you could search for days on market. You can search for properties in less desirable areas. You can go on Craigslist and see that sellers are for sale by owners. You can hear a word of mouth. You're going to see signs on corners for rentals. You will see ads for them for people needing to rent. One of the things I tell agents that I want to be clear about here, if you ever place an ad for no credit down lease to option, you will get 400 phone calls. So for sure, set up a separate phone number for this type of ads. However,
Google number.
I'm sorry, Tommy?
A Google number.
Yep, something like that. I also, if I'm not personally going to monitor those phone calls, I often will put a real estate team on for them to weed them out, because some people think they want a lease to own because they have this situation or that. It becomes a straight, what we used to call an up call or an opportunity call, or a lead. It becomes a lead call, and they maybe aren't going to do a lease option. I also want to tell you that one of the things I counsel people when they're first getting into looking into lease options, you're not going to get to shop the market like you would as a traditional buyer. You're going to have to look at properties where people are willing to do this. So you may wind up with one in your particular area. You may stumble into one that is not your dream house, but has the opportunities that you need to build, fix your credit, build up your payment, whatever it is that's causing you to be able to close today. So one of the things I have to caution people about is you can't shop traditionally. You're not going to get your pick of properties. You're going to get to pick from what's available up from the people who, these are, if you have the tolerance for lead calls, advertising a zero down situation, you will get 400 calls. Yes, they are going to not be 5-minute vetting situations, and you're going to be 10, 15 minutes on the phone with them every time to find out their situation. But this type of zero down ad a lease option available will ring your phone off the hook. So if you're looking for leads, this is a good way to go. Next one for me. Lots of people are reluctant to do lease options, and that we're going to talk about. Agents will very often not even put that it's available for a lease option on the MLS because they want to, we all do. We all want to do our work, get paid, and move on to the next one. So I used to joke when a transaction would close late that the God or universe, whatever you want to call it, knew when I was going to need money. And I assume I'm going to need money a year or 2 or 3 years down the road, as bad as I need it today. So these are realistic transactions that you can put in. I want to talk about that if you do a proper escrow on a lease option and get title insurance and what we call a memorandum of the option, which is not the option agreement itself with all the nitty gritty of the terms, but just a memorandum that an option exists on this property and we record it, a commission is earnable at the time you put the deal together. So this is a very important. This also allows us to show our stuff to you from the escrow and title side. In the case of granted escrow, we also have a holding company that can do hold the money if we need to hold the deposits, if we need to hold the down payment, if we need to hold anything like that. So we have the capability to manage this transaction for you, start to finish. If you want to get paid up front, then we do have to do a proper escrow and title, and there has to be a recording of a memorandum of the. But most people think they cannot get paid on lease option until it's all over. But that is not true, although most of them do go that way. Most people come up with the money at that point. We'll talk a little more about the money in just a few minutes. Before we get into the math, I want to tell you that I'm being very careful to make sure that I save time because I contacted an expert in Texas that is truly the guru of lease options. And she has a little 9-minute video where she demonstrates phone calls to realtors. And I'm going to show you that video today because after what I've taught you, when you watch her do it and you see how easy it is, this is going to be an immediate tool for you to use as a realtor out there to put more deals together, especially working with landlords and renters. One of the things when agents would come and sit at my desk as a broker and ask me how to get more deals today, I would ask them if they're farming apartments, if they're doing renters. And I would get a little wrinkled nose, and that's not what they wanted to hear from me. But this entire market is virtually untouched in California. So if you did a little bit of homework on it, had good experts, knew what you were doing, you can market these all day long. Start your own website and really take over this market in California. So the next slide. So a few years ago, I started calling this next portion I'm going to teach you the secret math, because really there's a set of numbers you'd really like to know if you can put this deal together. And when you had a lot of experience, like the staff does and Tommy and I do, we automatically, without a piece of paper, can rifle through the 8 or 10 pieces of information we need to know to see if a deal is viable. Not everybody can do that. So I have in the handout that we're putting in there, this next couple of slides is on a single page. It is, let's see, Tommy, tell me if I put it right in front of me. It's on a single page where you can evaluate a property. Oh, that's my page. You can evaluate a property. Now, before I go on with this, I want to remind you that you're not always on both sides of the transaction. And what this form also tells you is what you don't know. So the things that you are unable to answer are the things you don't know yet. And those are the things you're going to have to grill the other agent about or the buyer to find out if that situation is going to work. So let's take a look at the secret math of a lease option. Next slide, Tommy. Buyer's math is so easy. How much you got? That's it. Buyers will, in this situation, because they really want in, very often will blurt out in the first phone call, well, I've got $100,000 that I inherited and I'm just trying to decide what I can't buy today. And blah, blah. So I may not need $100,000 to do this transaction, but on the buyer side, when you're looking at it from the listing side, how much they got is the only thing I need to know. Okay? When I did one of these mini classes this week for an agent, and the client has $10,000. So I was able to walk them back from what was realistic with $10,000 and what was not realistic for the $10,000. A little trick I want to teach you here, and I put it here because I'm going to talk about it later. So if $10,000 is going to be the deposit on the home, I'm just using 10,000, it's a round number, it could be 2,700, 2,500, whatever the number is. You're going to use that same number 3 times. It is going to be the option fee. It is going to be the lease deposit. And finally, it's going to be credited in your transaction as though you put your EMD or your earnest money down. So you don't need $10,000 3 times. You need an X amount to get in the property and then make some decisions about whether you're going to stack some money on top of that monthly to build or if you're just going to wait it out and do a loan traditionally near the end of your option. Okay, so option fee, lease deposit, and EMD amount all are the exact same money, and that's very often just an equivalent of whatever the landlord's wanting for the deposit of the property. So, all right. So, for a seller to want to do this type of deal, here's some things you should know. What are they asking for on the MLS? You know, back in the day, we used to tell agents when buyers would ask the question, how much should I offer? We would say, well, list price is always a good place to start. So just what is the offer price on the MLS? Because in theory, the seller and the listing agent have put together a net sheet and they have some idea. What does the buyer think he wants to offer for this property? Is he saying that list price is impossible for him and that's a ridiculous price and he'll never pay it? Well, we're done. It's a very easy question. So you have to keep in mind what your buyer is willing to pay or what he can qualify for down the road, because he could get himself into a lease option where he can't afford the home down the road. If you're on the list side of the transaction, or if you speak to the listing agent, what is the seller netting after sale? If a home is free and clear, the seller's going to net $300,000, and they're going to want a high piece of that to get into a lease option or an AITD with you. If their entire profit out the door is $2,000 or $20,000 or $30,000, we can very often use this math. We know the list price. We know how much the seller needs to cash out, meaning ideally, the best way to say to a seller is, we're going to give you all your profit now, but we'd like you to stay in the deal with us for 1, 2, 3 years so that we can, and we're going to make some terms that are agreeable to you. We are either going to have enough to take you out, or we're going to have enough to net after the sale is an important amount of how much they're going to need out. If the seller's motivation at this time is very important too. If the seller is needing X number of dollars to get out into the next property, especially in this market, this is a great opportunity. This guy needs his 30-day out today so he can exercise his option on the other property. These are rock bottom deals where people will say what they need, and maybe your buyer has that amount because you have already ascertained. When you're the buyer side, you're going to try to not give that number up. You're going to try to find out what the seller needs to do this deal. But if you're on the listing side, I need to know what you got. How much money you got? What are we talking about here? Oh, we had a call. My husband's a realtor, and he had a call this morning. Person said straight out they had no money, 0 money, and they wanted into a property. My husband's somewhat of a newer realtor, so when he hung up, I said, you should watch my class on these options. This person is perfect for a consideration that way. Going back up one, option price. Many people think there must be a number for an option price. People can give an option with no consideration. Very often it can, if you want to give a consideration, it can be $100, $1, $500, something like that. But as I mentioned earlier, the option price is also going to be your deposit for your rental, and down the road, it's also going to be your EMD. So this number, you're going to need a certain, you're going to need a little bit of money to get into a property, because you're going to need a month and a half or 2 months with the rent to get in and the deposit. What is it costing to hold this property? The next question is what rent amount monthly? What is it literally costing to exercise for this seller to keep this property? That means PITI, which is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and HOAs, plus any amount the seller, so the minimum number is what it actually takes. So I can't give you a property for $1,500 that's costing me $2,000 a month to carry. We might do that for our children, but we're unlikely to do that for a stranger. So knowing how much it actually, so I've got enough money for the rent, I've got enough money that the price is going to look good, and I can afford the rent, and potentially I'm also going to be able to throw an extra pad on top of my rent payment that will be credited down in the future. This makes the deal a little sweeter for the seller, but if you are unable to exercise your options, you're not getting any of the money back except what was part of the lease, the actual deposit for the lease. And then that will still count on whether you destroyed the property or there was some repair that needed to be done or something like that. So a pad for eviction. The rule of thumb is 6 months of PITI times 6 says how much, if the buyer said to me $100,000 and I knew I had X number of PITI and rent and my monthly is this, so my actual nut to carry you for 6 months is 36,000. I really would like your $36,000 to be in our holding account so that when I have to evict you and you stop making payments, I'm able to, I have the pad for the eviction procedure. Because this math also works for AITDs, you may not need a pad for a lease option, but you're definitely going to want one for an AITD. And also for a seller to consider you a good risk, the more skin you have in the game, the better. So next one. So I don't know how many people know this, but you know, I know President Trump changed our taxes to some degree, and not all of us are getting the full benefit of the tax credit that you get every year for the interest you paid on your mortgage. But the law does say whoever's paying it gets that credit. But this is a negotiable matter, meaning if the seller's, if the benefit to the seller is that your lease payments, your rental payments benefit him because his taxes are lower, this is a legitimate term that helps him make it viable for the seller. It can also be a benefit to the buyer because, again, the law says he who pays it gets to credit it. Those statements that come at the end of the year that tell you how much your interest was do not have to be in the name of the person, but they can't be multiply filed. So the tenant can't file it and the seller can't file it. So there is a tax credit that is worth something here, that is a term that can be used during the transaction. Holding costs. It costs about approximately, I use a little company called Note World. Their real fees are like $25 to $30. So hedging inflation, I went ahead and said $50 a month to manage the account. They actually receive the payments from the buyer and they make the payments to the mortgage company. The benefit of this is we don't have that short sale market where the seller's collecting the rent and never making the mortgage and the tenant's kicked out anyway when the person comes to the door. Also, with a professional trustee company making all the payments and all that, they have a very low cost foreclosure if we were doing an AITD and we did have to evict this person. So $50 a month for professional management and another $2,500 to pay the trustee to foreclose on you if someday down the road you're unable to continue your transaction. Again, I'm sorry, this form is for both types of transactions, but the information that you need to know is similar on both. Commissions. So if you pays 100,000, the seller needs 30 out. There's enough room to pay the commissions. We have a pad of another 30. He needs 30 out, and we've got 36 in holding costs. Then in pads, we have enough to pay the commissions. So Be sure and put your number in here too, because if you can get paid at the beginning of the transaction, I positively, Granite Escrow and California Title can positively do those escrows and record those titles, and you can get paid. So make sure. So at the bottom, I said, so total if we were lucky. If we knew all of these facts, we would be able to go back and forth in a negotiation with somebody. And what happens is, not everybody is as astute at negotiating these, and different people will tell you different things and other people will not reveal certain things. And so there are times, and then that's where negotiation starts. We're going to talk about that a little bit. You're going to make the best presentation you can make from the beginning, and the seller will counter it. And I'm going to talk about a couple techniques I use to avoid anybody feeling on the hook while I'm negotiating. So next slide. Back one, please. I'm only going to give you the cover sheets of the documents. Again, in the car forms, you need 3 documents. You need an option, you need a regular RPA that you're going to write up like a normal RPA, and a residential lease that you're going to write up just like usual, except for a couple very small things that I'm going to show you in the next sheet. I'm ready for the next one. So even though this offer is written in this year, it's not going to close till 45 days after the property is evicted. And I do, in options, I do suggest you give yourself some time. Don't try to say 10 days or 15 or 30 unless you're just golden and know exactly what's going on with your loans and the market is not buried like it is right now. So 45 days is a reasonable amount of time to exercise that option. And then the second circle that I did down here for you, and D, there you go, is that you don't have to state what kind of financing you're getting. You may not know now. The contract defaults to conventional, just leave it at conventional, because whatever kind of loan you're going to get, you're allowed to get through the purchase contract anyway, and you can finance it any way you want, all the way from the bank of mom and dad to a traditional loan. And then the final thing at the bottom, Tommy, is this sentence brings all 3 documents into a complete package. It says the RPA, option agreement, and residential lease are all part of one agreement, meaning they can't accept one without accepting all of them. So this is the little trick I want to teach you. When I am negotiating, and I recommend this heartily, both as an escrow officer, when I was an escrow officer, when I learned it, and again, as a broker, you want to, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. I don't know what happens. It's gone. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Let's take a look at the option agreement. Next one down. It'll come back.
Yep.
Stay tuned for part 2 on that one. So you're going to attach these documents to be together, and they can't accept one or the other without.
Come on.
The next slide, Tommy.
Yeah, I'm trying to zoom out. There we go.
The option agreement does not need to have amount. Most people prefer options. All buyers wish they could get 5 years on an option. All buyers want to give you 6. All sellers want to give you 6 months to 1 year. Somewhere between the two is the number you're going to come up with. 2 years is a good lease option. 3 years for sure is right in there. After that, I'm a little concerned about your qualifying, and I'd be talking about that. Oh, it came back to me. I told you to come back to me. So when I draw these documents, I do not have the buyer sign them. We put our best terms after I've done the buyer's math and we know what we want to try to do. I fill out all these forms and I just send them over and say, hey, we're drafting up an offer. Is there anything here that you hate right now or that you know you can change? So I try to do all the negotiations back and forth by correcting the documents until we get to, oh, we got a deal, or the buyer wants to know you're for real, he wants to see a signed copy. Then we'll do the signed copy and send it over. Otherwise, you are going to have such a flurry of corrected documents that you have the higher risk management opportunity for something getting missed. So I try to stay in drafts on these documents until I get at least some sort of we're paying attention part of the transaction. So thank you for sticking with me while I remember what I wanted to say there. The third form is just a regular residential lease. Tommy, did I put page 2 of the residential lease in there, or did I use page 1?
Um,
One more. On the lease. One more? No? Am I done?
that's page 1, just page 1.
All right, so on page 2 of the residential lease, they have little boxes where you say how much is due now, how much is due in the future, how much is collectible today. I'm sorry, I meant to slide page 2 in there. It's just a small box we've all seen on the lease. That is where all your math should add up as to who's giving what, when, and what day, and what there's going to be payments or not. And so that's what I wanted to say about that. So that brings me to the expert that I wanted you to, and we'll take questions too at the end, and I'm sure if Tommy had any, he would let me know. I'd like to introduce you to Wendy Patton. The good news is that while I was rewatching her videos yesterday, I gave her a call, and she is on vacation for a month right now, but she's offered to come back in June and speak to us live about, because she teaches, she actually has a program you can buy, and that's why I wanted you to see. In Texas, these are so common that she's just a 100%, this is all she does. These are the only kinds of transactions that she does. And she does sell a program, roughly $1,000, that tells you everything, including which side of the market you are. Here's a disc for when you're in the seller's market. Here's all my sample letters. Here's my cold calls. Here's all of that. So we'll go on to the next slide. And for the next, it's only 9 minutes, and I was carefully timed for it, but I want you to see her making calls about on the MLS, looking for the types of properties that she.
Hi, I'm Wendy Patton, and what I want to show you today is how to make calls to real estate agents. When you're doing a lease with an option to buy, 95% of my deals at least come from real estate agents. So I'm going to show you how to look up things that are listed by real estate agents, what to look for, and then what to say to them. I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, I'm not going to say that I'm a real estate agent because I want to show you how to do it even if you're not a real estate agent. Then I'll show you one as a real estate agent as well. Hi, Barb?
Yes.
Hi, Barb. My name is Wendy. I was calling you about a house that I saw for sale.
Uh-huh.
And I wondered if it's still available or if you could tell me a little bit about it.
Which one is it?
It's on Camilla. I think it's Camilla?
Yes.
Okay.
It's still available.
Okay.
And, I'm driving, so I'm trying to think.
That's all right.
Footage in there. It's got 3 stories. It's got a finished walkout basement. It's in Lake Orion.
Okay. Lake Orion Schools?
But
It's Lake Orion Schools, right?
yes, you got
Okay.
it.
All right.
Yes. And it's, I mean, if you want to get online, you can do the virtual tour of it.
Oh, okay. I could do that.
Yeah, I'll give you my website.
Okay.
It's www.barb, B-A-R-B, and Tom, T-O-M,
Okay.
and that's Homes, Homes.com.
Okay.
And then you click view our listings, and then you go down to Camilla, and you can do the virtual tour from there.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I've been driving by it for a while, and it seems like it's been for sale for a while. Is there anything
It has been probably for about, I'm trying to think, maybe 7 months.
Okay.
We have it for lease with option to purchase now, plus for sale. We started out at, I forgot what we started at, 220 or something. Now we're down to 169.
Okay. What are the terms on the lease with option to buy? That's really what I'm looking for.
Lease with option to purchase, if you gotta have option money to make it legal. So whether you have, like $5,000 down, a couple $1,000s down, or if you put like $200 a month or something towards your option at the end.
Okay.
But somewhere we have to have the option money, $1,400 a month,
Okay.
and that's about it. So you need like a month, 2.5 months, and then
super. And is it available now?
Yes, yep,
Okay.
it's vacant, it's available, and ready to go.
Okay, super. Well, thank you so much. How about if I'm gonna look up the virtual tour and then I'll give you a call back if I want to see the inside of it, you know.
That's not a problem, I'd be more than happy to show it to you.
Thanks, Barb.
Okay, you have a
Okay.
great day, let me know if you need anything else.
Thanks. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, here's the scoop. So Barb answers, I want to explain this because the funny thing is, nowhere in this listing does it say it's for rent with option to buy. That's the reason I called it. It's easy to find the ones that say rent with option to buy because you can do a search on the MLS on rent with option to buy. But this particular one didn't even say anywhere on here that it's for lease or option to buy. And here it came out with, I didn't even have to say that. She said it to me. So I'm going to have to go check this one out because this one, it's it's 2,300 square feet with 1,000 square foot walkout finished basement. So about 3,300 square foot, very nice, newer construction looking home. Well, built in 94, so it's fairly new. And it's been listed since, let's see, it's been listed 9 months. She said 7, but it's been 9 months according to the sheet. She doesn't know I was an agent. And the one mistake also she did as an agent, she should have said, let me get your name and number, Wendy. Are you working with anyone? But anyway, she just sent me to her website. It's probably one of the reasons this particular house isn't sold because I could have this house sold, this particular deal. I could have this sold within 2 days right now by listing this sucker on Craigslist with those details. So if you're an agent, that's the kind of stuff you can do. I can find a buyer for this as an agent and get commission. As an investor, I could go ahead and buy this sandwich lease option to somebody else. A really good opportunity in that one. Okay, now I'm going to call an agent that I happen to know. I haven't done any deal. I don't even know if we've ever done a lease option together. I know I've bought properties from him in the past, but he's a pretty big listing agent, so he's got lots of listings. That means lots of possibilities for sellers that might be able to do this. So his name is Lee.
Hello?
Hi, Lee.
Yes,
Hey, Lee, it's Wendy Patton. How are you today?
good.
Hey, did I catch you at a good time?
Yeah, I'm showing some condos.
Oh,
Could I call you back maybe in a little bit, or is it just, do you have a quick question? or-
just real quick, if you can answer for me. Your Highlander, is that a possible of a lease to own?
I don't know, he's an attorney, and he's an old style attorney, so I don't
Never
wanna
mind.
say there's no way it could work, because maybe he possibly would,
I've done that before. I don't buy from attorneys. No.
if you wanna take a look at it.
Do you have any other listings, Lee, where maybe the sellers might be able to do that, where it's, vacant, they're not in foreclosure, not a short sale, but they,
No, right now, that's 90% of our market,
is what?
short sale, foreclosures,
How about the other 10%? You got any of those?
No, this is the only one I can think of right now.
Okay.
He owns it pretty clear.
Oh. Okay, so maybe he can. Is he still living there?
No.
Okay.
Well, right now I think he's in Florida. He lives in Elk Rapids.
How about a land contract on it?
He might consider that.
Would he be more likely to do that than a lease option?
Yeah, that
Okay.
would be my guess.
Okay. Well, it might be worth looking at. Okay. I appreciate it, Lee. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, so what I did there is I asked him about, I don't ever take a real estate agent's answer of a no as a no. I'll always ask another question. Well, do you have any other listings where your sellers might be able to consider something like a rent to own? And one of the questions that you can always ask an agent is, do you ever have a seller that has said something to you like, hey, if my home doesn't sell soon, I might have to rent it? Bingo, now you know that particular seller might be a really good lease option candidate and someone that I would be interested in buying a home from. Now this particular one, I kind of joke about the attorney thing, but if you've read my books and you've seen some of my articles, I'm not really kidding about that. I don't buy from attorneys, not on a lease to own, because if anything did go wrong, they will just drag you out in court and it can be a real pain. Now, a land contract is something it's called a contract for deed as well. It's not available in every state in the country, but it is available in many states, including the Midwest, and or it might be called something different. Basically, it would be seller financing. This particular owner owns it free and clear, which means you might be able to get some really good terms, and he's not living there anymore. Bingo might be a good one. Just got to watch that attorney thing, okay? I also wanted to comment that agent said 90% of our market is foreclosures and short sales. Honestly, it's not quite that high, but that's how some agents feel. And so I'm going to joke back and say something about the other 10%, which is what I did. The interesting thing is I made 2 calls, 2 people that answered. Well, I made more than 2 calls. 2 people answered. And what I had done is I had just taken my MLS and gone through and picked out listings that were not saying anything about a foreclosure or a short sale. And I focused on those. And guess what? 2 out of 2 said yes. I mean, and we're in the worst market in the country, Michigan. Okay, that's the worst market you can be in. So this works anywhere in the country. It doesn't matter how slow your market is, how hot your market is. I started doing these in the early 90s, and our market was really hot, 10% appreciation every year. And of course, back then, this same agent that I just called on this one was like, hey, we don't do those. We don't need to do those. You know, our market is so good. And now, of course, yeah, he's thinking of, they're trying to be creative and think about things because they're hurting as well. Got to be thinking about how to creatively solve the seller's problem and work with the real estate agents. Notice I didn't even talk about commission with these agents when I brought this up. I didn't even bring it up. Now, of course, my course talks about how to do that, how to help them get some of their commission right now so they'll really be working for you and finding even more deals than what they might have listed as well. So definitely check that out.
Okay. I think that really sums up how available, Tommy, you can hear me okay? I forgot if I'm on mute.
Yep.
So it really sums up how very realistic, and by the way, a land contracting in California is called an AITD or a wrap mortgage, which we talked about before, and they are legal in California. We have just a couple of minutes. Besides questions, I want to mention to you that 10 or 12 years ago, I just want to tell you my own lease option story. I had gotten divorced, and after we settled all our expenses, I had less than $100,000 going forward. The short sale market was going on, and you can tell that that's what was going on when this was being videoed, but they're still very it's very realistic. So I went to look at a condo that I wanted to rent, and I asked if he was interested in a lease option, and he first didn't understand, and so I'd explain a little bit, and then he said that he was $14,000 short currently to the mortgage, and that his credit was dive bombing down, and he was already in another property, and he didn't see how. So we switched this from a lease option to an AITD, which we're going to talk about again, but using the same basic concept we just talked about. And I owned that condo for $14,000. Now, when I met my husband, and he, again, he's new to real estate, he could not understand why in the short sale market, I would put $14,000 down on a property that was currently $60K under its value. However, knowing what I was doing and knowing how to comp properties and knowing that area, I knew that those condos would come back with the market, positively come back with the market. And right now, that condo is at about 140 over what I would have if I had stayed in it. Now, when I decided I was 2 years into my AITD when I decided to move to Temecula and remarry. And I called the seller up to tell him I was going to go ahead and market the property and sell it. He confessed to me that he was now divorcing, and could he buy it back? So I got it back. So I owned it basically the entire time. I was completely in charge of how it got painted and all that sort of stuff. And in the end, he gave me back 20 grand to take the property back. So I just went ahead and did a deal with him because he was the motivated person, and I was getting my money back, and I was able to exit that transaction. We had not recovered enough for me to make as much as it was easy to get the 20K and go. If I had hung on now, I'd be selling a property that was 140 over where I bought it at this time. So when people, because of California's ability to sell property, we just don't have as many opportunities to explore these options. But you today could own property. When you get into Wendy's videos, I think she said she's upwards towards 600 properties that she owns now, where she either sandwiched leased her way in, or and then in a few years she takes them out and and does, and I'm sure in times like this is where she's turning a few loose. But AITV's lease options are a real way to purchase. You have real capability with the Granite Escrow team and the California Escrow and the California Title team to get paid up front. I positively can help you put together that draft offer, help you understand their reply and what would be a good counter to that sort of thing. So I really want you to feel confident that these are transactions that are real. And by the way, very often, if some of these people had done transactions a couple of years ago, and the buyer's not able to exercise the option, you go right back into the market as a seller. Yep. At the high end of the market. So you got all your costs carried the whole way. You got a little side money tucked away. One of the reasons, my last thought before I take questions, is one of the reasons I recommend holding escrows is because sellers tend to spend that pad. And so we put some language in there. Granted, escrow has some language, and I have some language from CAR that we recommend that the realtor use to waive off if they've spent their pad and they're unable to save themselves when something goes wrong. But that's why we would recommend holding escrow for that type of thing, so that the money's safe.
You have options at the end too, right? Because let's say that your client who is doing the option decides that they can't move forward or they don't want to move forward with the purchase. If you are staying in contact with them like you should be, you would be first to know that before even the original seller knew that. So then you have options there as well as an agent, because one, you could see if they're willing to allow you to show the property. It's not listed, but you may have buyers and buyers may be interested. And then at that portion, you may have the buyer already that would be willing to purchase it, right? So you have options there as well. And I mean, I have one deal that I just closed last month, 2 months ago, closed it in December. And it was an agent that was actually looking for a lease option, and in the process of looking for a lease option, couldn't find anything that was already listed. So therefore started farming properties that were paid free and clear, that were rentals, and found somebody in this miraculous market where the property was vacant, or going to be vacant actually. It needed a little bit of work because of the tenants that were in it. The owner lived out of state, was fed up with the fact that, you know, dealing with this and everything else, and was able to negotiate a seller carry. And it worked out great because the buyers didn't have the best of credit, but it wasn't bad. And it needed a little bit of work, but nothing that couldn't have been fixed in 6 months type of thing. But had solid jobs, had jobs where they had been long-term in their career, they had been long-term in the same profession, and that profession was an essential worker, both of them. And the seller was like ecstatic about the option to be able to do a carryback. One, he's going to end up making more money off that house than if he were to sell it right now. But the biggest thing was he didn't need the cash on hand right now. He was just tired of the headache. And he was scared to put renters back into the house in the midst of COVID. So it worked out great. He did a seller carryback and everything worked out.
And on your sheet, it becomes a credit instead of a debit. Instead of the carrying costs, you actually added an asset to your plus side of your total worth.
Yeah.
As well. I am so passionate about lease options. One of my favorite classes to teach. They are positively a real way to buy. You have to have an attitude of it is possible. And when you think about seeding the ground or farming out into the future, this is putting 10 of these in escrow is going to pay just like every other escrow somewhere down the road. So do we have any questions?
No, but I would add this real quick too, is Mary Jane brought this up at the beginning, right? You may not get paid in the front end on a lease option. However, you're ultimately hoping to get paid on the back end. Now, I'm sure in some markets like the one that you saw in the video and stuff, she can make a really good living doing this just solely as her sole income. And however, you can use this as one of the pillars of your business, right? So if this is an additional pillar to your business and you can do 10 lease options a year or more, think about what your business is going to look like 1 year, 2 year, 3 year down the road as you've been doing this ongoing, because most of these lease options are not going to be for a lease to purchase 5 years down the road. They're usually 1 to 2 years down the road. So that just means that you're going to increase your commissions by 10 transactions a year moving forward, right?
I mentioned that when you have that separate number, you're going to get calls. You're going to get more calls than you can handle. I mean, honestly, it could be 400 calls a month. In our area, we have a company that is nationwide, but happens to luckily to be in our area, dedicated credit repair with Tiffany. And you can register at no cost, 50 of those people a month to save their credit.
Mhm.
So they may not be a now deal, but they will be excited because they will reveal to you what their fatal flaw is. I just got divorced or I've got school loans, or I had a foreclosure, or I ran up my credit cards, or whatever it is. They will reveal it to you. And so even the people who can't buy now will create a farm, and I'm telling you, no one is working this market. So no one is effectively working this market.
And the RPA protects you because the RPA is going to be in effect for the duration of that lease to own. So you have that contract. So, they're not going to be able to work around you. There are things that you'll have put in place that, are there to take care of that commission type of thing. I do have a question. I'll start the questions if that's okay. So if I'm working with a lease to own buyer, would it be in my best interest to get a buyer broker or a buyer agreement with that potential buyer so that, let's say that lease to own doesn't work, but they decide they want to go buy another property instead? Would that potentially protect me in commission wise, or?
The number one thing I tell every agent as a broker about buyer broker agreements is if you present it as a shopping list, there is a spot on there that says, what am I looking for? What zip code, what price range, what lease options, what purchases. If you treat it as a shopping list, when you are presenting it, I find that they go much better. Also, you have clear instructions, because we all know that the single story buyer will buy a 2-story if he bumps into the right one. Yep. So it's a real opportunity. In certain cases, I've used whole zip codes, up to 350 in 925, 92, 93, 94, 95. So you can tie up quite a bit with some appropriate language in your buyer broker agreement, but positively, I'm a big fan of buyer broker agreements. I have become, at this age, that broker that is always talking about best practice. I remember when I was younger in real estate, and the broker would always tell me that I should or shouldn't do this, and you kind of walk between those lines as best you can. I'm finally there where I'm the person encouraging you to make the most of every opportunity, but to do it carefully and safely. So a buyer, and this, what other than the procuring cost call that we talked about last week, a buyer being stolen away from you is really one of the all I can offer is sympathy, most likely at that point. So I'm sorry, I'm a big fan of buyer broker.
And it's an easy one to get in this scenario because let's be honest, somebody who can't qualify right now for whatever reason to just have a standard purchase, and they're looking towards that lease option, they're willing to sign an agreement that they're solely willing to work with you. Why? You have their answers. You're the one that can help them with that lease option. And, all they want is to get into a home, right? So they would be willing to, in most cases, sign that, that they're solely working with you anyway. So
We have a lease option coming due here shortly where we have worked for 2 years to get this buyer qualified. She's got too many kids and too many things, her and her husband going on, that we're not going to be able to do it. But she has been a faithful payer of her rent, and we are going to turn it into a seller carryback from here because the sellers trust them and feels comfortable that they've taken good care of the home, and we're able to go someplace we would not have been able to go day one with this transaction.
And that happens quite often. If you talk to anybody who set up lease options, let's be honest, if the seller does not have a mortgage on it, okay, the odds are, say a year down, 2 years down the road, the odds are that there is a possibility they would be interested in a seller carryback as long as all those payments would be made on time without fail. They may have put a little cushion of $100 or $300 a month on top of that went into an impound account. And then the seller feels comfortable at that point that they're not going to default on it. They're going to make more off of that house as doing a seller carryback than continuing to do this lease option moving forward. It's in their best interest on write-offs and everything else. So the odds are that could happen very easily with somebody who does not also have a loan on the property.
Especially since sales price is not our only goal here, as it is in every other market. If the bottom drops out, you just don't exercise your option.
Right.
Because the seller will be looking at what the property may be worth a couple years down the road. Because we have a lot of language for don't count your chickens before they hatch. A lot of times we can walk them back from some of that, but this is not a bargain tool most often. It's not to get a bargain. It's usually at list or slightly better than they would get for waiting for you.
And you're going to have to do some research on all this. This isn't look up and say, just look for the lease options that are already putting it out there. You got to find the scenario where a lease option may work and be asking the appropriate questions with that agent or with that Mr. Seller to figure out whether or not it's a possibility, right?
Listings, even if they're not really looking at that type of transaction, you could put it in as a term anyway, and you're going to get those calls and you're going to get those buyer leads anyway, even if you're, and again, no crystal ball means the seller may decide that that's what he can do, even though he wasn't going to at all. And we show them all offers anyway, good, bad, or in between. So,
you just have to get the right research behind it. So if I look up a property on the MLS and I see something that's been on the market in this market, a couple 100 days or more, I need to research that property. How do you do that? You can go to my site, tommyfortitle.com, register there, be able to access property reports. Couple things that I'm looking for on that. One, who the owner is, how long they've owned the house, when the deed of trust, or if there's a deed of trust on it, but when that was formed and how much it was for, gives me an idea of how much they owe on the property. All these things play a part that you can do before you even have that conversation, right? If I find out that their original deed of trust was within the last 2 years and it was for X amount and they're only trying to sell it for this, I know that they're not even breaking even or they're barely breaking even. It's probably not a possibility because you got to be able to cover that DOT, right? And if you can't cover that deed of trust or that loan, it's not going to happen. So, you'll have to do some research, yes. But if you do your research and you make your calls, you can find these all day, every day, because they're out there. And like Mary Jane said, in our area, this is not mainstream. You don't see this happening all the time. You go into other states, it's extremely common.
That's the only reason you don't know about them. We're running over a little bit, so we always stay on after. So if there are no further questions coming, I always stay on. So you can stay on and talk more about your particular situation if you want some help.
If you have questions, though, go ahead and ask them. You know, Tracy did ask, you know, where she can get more training on this. I'll let you take that piece.
For the Granite team, I positively, if we can just set up something and we'll go at it until you feel comfortable. And by the way, thank you for asking, because one thing Tommy and I always forget to tell you is our classes can be 1 person, 2 persons, 10 persons. This is just a demonstration that we know what we're doing and can help you. So you don't have to only hear if I happen to be teaching it this week. If this is something you want to do and you want to get your team on board, we'll commit. Tommy knows how to run a renter's market farm, you know, all those sort of things. So Tracy and John, I'd be happy to work with you at your convenience to be more. Otherwise, like I said, I don't go to bed till the news is over. So
yeah, and I would say is the other, you know, place to look for these as well. Yes, the MLS, finding those days on market, all that kind of stuff. But for sale by owners is a good place as well. A lot of these for sale by owners have tons of equity, are not in a hurry to sell. There's a reason why they're not in a hurry to sell. But, you know, vacant homes, there's a lot of vacant homes popping up right now. And everybody's going, why is this house vacant? Why is this house vacant? Well, it's vacant because that landlord does not want to put a renter in it because they know they can't evict them. And they're probably trying to determine right now what their options are. Do I want to put a renter in there and take my chance that they're going to pay with the notion that they know they're protected? Or do I want to look at potentially selling it? Or do I own it outright, or I can cover the expenses on it and not want to put somebody in there until that protection clause has been lifted? But you're seeing more and more vacant homes pop up and stay vacant for a while. And that's why, right? So, you know, those are also, you know, what you want to go after as well, is trying to get in contact with that person. I can definitely help direct you in the right direction to do that.
And we talked in earlier classes about the different types of listing agreements. One is an open listing. You can use that with a FSBO all day long to get exclusive rights to be marketing and to get permission to start marketing that property. So I just added it to our list. Tommy, we're going to be working with FSBO somewhere down the road. A lot of agents won't work with FSBOs because they're not going to get the whole nut. There was a FSBO market a few years ago where I started having my agents sell their services a la carte. We would rent you a lockbox for so much a month. We would qualify all your buyers because only one buyer is going to buy that house. What are you going to do at 19? You're not in real estate. We have charged them just to write the offer. We have charged them to do their disclosures. And in some cases, they wind up nickel and diming themselves right back to a full commission anyway. So there's lots of ways to work to sell your services if you are not exclusively saying no to things that are viable in your industry.
The handouts, the PowerPoint are all in the chat. So if you don't see them there, let me know. But as long as you were online with us, they are in the chat. Just scroll up through the chat. You will find both those files. And if you guys have any questions, we'll stay on to answer those. But I think we'll cut the training off right here and just do that offline. So guys, thank you for joining us. And again, if you have any questions, hang around and we'll get those answered for you.